The Thai, 20th of March 2023, China's big Canadian mistake, taking the Michaels as hostages. I used to teach at the Guangzhou Institute of Foreign Languages 40 years ago as a foreign expert. Now the Guangdong University of Foreign Studies. I rented numerous videotapes from the American Embassy for a first-year lecture course on life in the West. The day before I used them, I had to give them to the audiovisual section so they could make copies. Although it was creative theft, nobody in China seemed to care. Similarly, a bookstore in the heart of Guangzhou was off-limits to foreign visitors because every book there was a counterfeit of an academic or scientific Western publication. A Chinese colleague I questioned about this behavior's scholarly ethics acknowledged that it was awkward. He comforted me by saying it would be acceptable for Western academics to copy contemporary Chinese studies. The only thing that counted was catching up with and surpassing the West. I'd like to believe that China, which was in the early stages of its rise to global power, had grown past those awkward times and is now funding international research or paying its spies to do so, like any other great power. However, recent allegations that China meddled in Canadian elections, including the race for mayor and council in Vancouver last year, indicate that China is taking its efforts to reclaim its former imperial clout a little too far. China has long marketed itself as a friend to all and a country that doesn't meddle in the domestic affairs of other nations. Thanks to this policy, China has done business profitably with some very unsavory governments, giving China the right to snarl at any country or organization that dares to critique China. Chinese critics are correct. For centuries, the West wanted more from China than just commerce on its terms. It also wanted to impose Western institutions on China, whether or not they were appropriate for the country's autocratic government. However, Beijing is now held accountable for allegedly interfering in Vancouver's most recent local and 2 federal elections. The Chinese paid for the Trudeau administration undoubtedly knew about Chinese interference in the 2019 and 2021 elections, possibly even earlier, but kept silent for understandable reasons. We have had tense ties with China, at least since the arrest of Meng Wanzhou in 2018. Since then, politicians in Canada and diplomats in China have been making faces at one another while conducting business as usual. In 2022, we increased our purchases of Chinese products from $86 billion to $100 billion. Political meddling is terrible, but business is business. Political meddling is wrong, but business is business. Of that, $31 billion went to consumer products, with $28 billion to electronic and electrical equipment. Additionally, we have sold China goods worth $27.9 billion. However, the allegations of electoral meddling in Vancouver are more concerning because they are local. The accusations, in the first place, jeopardize Mayor Ken Simon's ABC majority on the council. Some people will view them as stooges no matter what they say or do. They also seriously undermine voters' confidence in the fairness of the election process. Trump and his supporters insist that the 2020 election was rigged, but Elections Canada makes the entire gerrymandered American system appear bad. Whataboutters might assert that everyone from big oil to regional entrepreneurs already impacts our elections. However, we take that into account because at least the typical suspects are more subdued about it. Third, and most significantly, Beijing has jeopardized Chinese nationals with ties to Canada and Canadians of Chinese ancestry. Numerous Chinese students have attended our colleges and institutions. However, as tensions rise, their hard-earned Canadian degrees may make them untrustworthy at home, and their nationality may make them inconsistent here. Researchers from China and Canada won't be able to collaborate in either nation. Prejudice against Asians is as ancient as British Columbia. And as we observed with the pandemic, the fact that it originated at China biolabs served as a sufficient pretext for our anti-Asian individuals to attack people publicly. When China was a world unto itself during the old Chinese Empire, which Xi Jinping was eager to restore, people outside its boundaries looked to the empire as the source of wealth and knowledge. Today's China does not benefit the world in any way. Instead, she steals from everyone and is despised by everyone. We have a case of barbarian mismanagement that has given China an American-sized case of blowback, which is why the empire's small agency known as Barbarian Management was in charge of foreign affairs. Even if Xi Jinping remains in power for the rest of his life, he will never be able to forget about his careless meddling in Canadian matters.